Over the last several weeks, a lot of attention has been on Aster and the Aster airdrop, not to mention the massive price appreciation of the Aster token price. But one of the things that I think amongst these last several weeks, a lot of people have forgotten is the airdrop that came with the likes of HyperLiquid. HyperLiquid still holds the record for the largest airdrop in crypto history at today's value of about $18 billion, and that's with a B, billion. So a lot has been happening behind the scenes on HyperEVM, essentially the layer 1 blockchain for the likes of HyperLiquid. And we're going to talk about some of the top projects on HyperEVM that have airdrops in their pipelines. Some of these are very, very time sensitive, and I mean very time sensitive, where the window of opportunity is going to be closing very soon. We're going to have chapters outlined down below so you can skip to different projects if you want to learn more about one instead of the other. And that said, if you enjoy content like this, consider subscribing. You enjoyed this video, smash up the like. Without further ado, let's jump into the video. When you take a look at the historical airdrop index, you can see that HyperLiquid has the largest crypto airdrop ever, at all-time highs worth at about $18 billion, just absolutely insane. And to think that is only about half of the overall airdrop potential. And that was the very first airdrop. We're coming up on that 1-year anniversary into November, and there's a lot of speculation as to when is the next airdrop. When you look at the tokenomics, there's a good portion that is still set aside for future incentives. When you take a look at the current price of HyperLiquid, you can also see that the value of the tokens today, so for example, the amount of tokens that back then, the value was significantly less. But because of the price appreciation, there could be less tokens and still more value. I mean, when you look at the 1,300% gains plus over the last year alone, it's been very, very impressive for the likes of Hype. And when you take a look at some of the criteria and some of the things that people are focusing on, the biggest thing that I think most people need to understand is the potential for what's called double farming. And we're going to dive into that and what that means more specifically. But it essentially is two birds, one stone. By participating in the HyperEVM HyperLiquid ecosystem, you can potentially get two airdrops, one from HyperLiquid and the other from other projects on top of HyperEVM. Because when you take a look at some of the point systems some of these projects have, they're very much indicative of what typically you see with airdrop protocols. So something to consider, but we're going to dive into that further on. Just a few things before we get into these specific projects. 38% of the total supply for HyperLiquid is still reserved for the community. HyperLiquid's focus is still on strong organic growth. Their revenues have 60x'd since their first airdrop in November of last year. And there's a huge growth potential for the project. Does not have venture capital. More than 65% of the supply is for the community. The second airdrop is not official. That is the other thing to consider, and there's heavy speculation around it. The other thing to think about is also there is going to be the core contributors token allocation that is going to be unlocked also coming up. So there is some speculation as to maybe some of the sell pressure that you may see from these tokens getting unlocked. So there's always going to be different levels of speculation. But I want to talk about this term called double farming and what this could mean, and more specifically, what could the next airdrop be more focused on? What is going to get more valued? Obviously very beginning of the likes of HyperLiquid, a lot of attention on just simply trading volume and perpetual trading. What could the shift be? Where could more of the focus be? Where could more of the allocation be? So that way you spend more time in those areas. So one of the biggest things, this is a really good article. I'll leave a link to it down below. At the heart of the potential evolution lies HIP 3, HyperLiquid Improvement Proposal 3, an upgrade that allows anyone to create and deploy their own perpetual futures markets in a permissionless manner, which I think is something very interesting. And we'll touch on this at the very end of the video because it ties right back into this. So this presents a major shift aiming to transform HyperLiquid into a universal exchange for assets just far beyond crypto. If you look at the likes of Aster already, there's already stock trading and different trading already. With HyperLiquid, it is simply just primarily crypto. But imagine a time where you can trade other assets, whether that is stocks, whether that is gold, other valuable minerals, whether that's copper. You think of other just general exchanges that occur, right? Other platforms where you could exchange commodities, other types of exchanges. It's essentially attempting to be a universal exchange. Anything that is exchanged could be exchanged on HyperLiquid. That is the whole idea, and there's going to be a lot of attention moving on that moving forward. So here's the 3 big takeaways for this position, to position yourself for this potential airdrop. And like I said, this is potential. There's a lot of hypotheticals. There's a lot of theories about this. So do with this as you will, but it's one of those things that you don't necessarily want to miss out on once it does come around, if it does come around, when all of the dominoes are essentially lined up. So first of all, explore the ecosystem. There's a ton of projects on HyperEVM. Bridging over to HyperEVM, you need to add HyperEVM to your wallet, MetaMask, for example, and then be able to bridge. I absolutely love using dBridge. It's very, very simple. The fees are relatively low. So bridging over is typically pretty easy. Some of these platforms and projects that we're going to talk about as well have some of those features built in. So do consider that. But this is a huge aspect. We're using community ranking to identify the most promising protocols S tier, such as Kinetiq, a Vault protocol that lowers the barrier to HIP-3 staking, and Unit are receiving particular attention. We're going to cover those in today's video. There's also what's called double farming. So many of these ecosystem projects have introduced their own point systems. You're going to see this in every single project that we're looking at, except for the likes of Unit. By using these platforms, you're positioning yourself not only for the Hype airdrop, but you're also positioning yourself for native tokens of these individual projects. That's sometimes a thing that most people don't honestly think about. They don't think about the making your money work double time, making your money work overtime for you, and doing more than just a very basic standard minimum. So although HyperLiquid has different layers, activity on Hypercore, the custom engine for on-chain order books, is considered the most value. This means prioritizing trading on perpetual and spot markets rather than other DeFi applications on the network. So like I said, there's a lot of different features about this. There's a lot of things to think about, but I want to dive into first project that is being Kinetiq. Now, Kinetiq is time sensitive, specifically due to the fact that on the 16th, the final K points distribution will occur. So this is very, very important. This is going to be the very last distribution for Kinetiq points. So if you want to get exposure to the ecosystem, there's plenty of ways to do that. We're going to look at that in just a second. But this one is very, very time sensitive. You've got 8 days, but still plenty of opportunity to get at least a little bit towards this exposure. So it is a platform. When you take a look at what they're doing, there's just a lot of liquidity staking within the Kinetiq ecosystem. They have about $2 billion in TVL. So if we go over to stake, you can see about $1.9 billion overall within their platform. And you essentially can use K-Hype, which is the Kinetiq version of Hype, and be able to supply that to be able to earn yield. So you have Kinetiq Earn. Kinetiq Earn puts your Hype and K-Hype to work across leading DeFi protocols on HyperEVM, optimizing for the best adjusted returns. So $533 million in TVL, very, very well put together. There are different platforms. So these are a lot of different protocols where you can participate in these and earn yield. And so we're going to look at some ways where you can, with some of these platforms, almost kind of triple farm, which is kind of insane to even think about. But you can triple farm with some of these projects if you're doing it the right way. And then there are some validators, which is part of the aspect of the HIP-3 and the staking portion. It lowers the barrier to staking once this actually loads. So here you go. So you can see some of these validators that you can stake towards if you want. But the biggest earning aspect is going to be using some of these protocols. So K points, the last distribution, every distribution occurs Thursdays. I would assume that there would be one for tomorrow, and then the very, very last one on the 16th of October. So be mindful of that. This is winding down very quickly, but still plenty of opportunity left, which brings us to project number 2 called ProjectX. Now, ProjectX is actually one I participated in when the XPL token went live and generated some crazy insane yield very early on with the likes of XPL. But ProjectX allows you to trade any crypto with 0 fees. It is currently in phase 2. This started about 3 weeks ago. And this is also another project that has points accrual system. Now, here's how you can triple farm, right? So the idea is that ProjectX has a point system. The likes of Kinetiq has a point system. Both of these potentially have future airdrops that you could be aligned with. And the beauty of it is you can provide hype and K-hype and earn from people exchanging between those two tokens. You essentially provide liquidity in both of those assets, which you don't necessarily have to worry about losing any value or in permanent loss because, well, they're essentially tied back to each other. Now, obviously, if this pool goes down in liquidity, there could be obviously some concerns, but you don't necessarily have to worry about one asset versus another. For example, UXPL versus USD0, which XPL has a varying value. USD0 is a stablecoin. So there's a reason why a ton of people are supplying K-hype and hype on the likes of ProjectX because you're triple farming at this point. TVL for this has grown tremendously. The fees, obviously 0 fees is a huge proponent for the growth of ProjectX and why you're seeing this outgrow some of the other DEXs, if you will, or exchange platforms on HyperEVM. There's really nothing that can beat the cleanness of the likes of ProjectX. I have a link down below if you want to join. Same thing for the likes of Kinetiq. Link's going to be for every single one of these projects so you can get right to them and not waste your time trying to find them. But there are some really interesting aspects. You do kind of have to be a little bit knowledgeable with what you're doing, especially with some of these that have variable values, right? Something like this, with K-hype and hype, you don't have to really worry as much as far as setting your parameters. But for example, you can see that you can earn 88% APR with the likes of hype in USDT0. Now, in this instance, you wouldn't earn towards the K-hype. So maybe for this example, you want to use USD0 and K-hype. So that way you're earning for the Kinetiq and you're earning potentially towards the HyperLiquid airdrop. And then on top of that, you're earning towards ProjectX. So in this instance, obviously the smaller that you set your range, then the more APR. But you would have to make sure that the K-hype token, in this instance hype, is trading between these ranges, and if you get out of these ranges, it's not really a good thing. So be mindful of that. Obviously the tighter your range, typically you're going to see the higher the APR. So some of these APRs can kind of get out of hand, but this is a great way to be able to not only earn passive income, to be able to earn and essentially triple farm your airdrop. Now, moving on to HyperLend. HyperLend is a lending platform, so you can borrow and lend. This is one of the biggest overall. They have about $1 billion in liquidity currently on HyperLiquid, about half the size of the likes of Kinetiq, but it is growing tremendously. And for some people that want to borrow against their hype, you can see there's almost $300 million worth of hype that is deposited. That people are borrowing against, 218 million of that. So that is a very good amount that is being utilized. This is a platform, if you have hype or you want to borrow hype or if I can say it right, borrow other assets against another asset that maybe you want to contribute, something to definitely consider, a great way to get involved. And the likes of what you see with HyperLend also has a point system. The last thing I want to highlight is talk about one project that there's not a lot really known about it. And that is typically a very good thing, because that means that's how stupidly early you are to something like this. So the first thing to consider is Unit is one of the bigger projects. It's a asset tokenization layer on HyperLiquid. So you can essentially deposit native assets directly to HyperLiquid. Very popular, up there with the likes of Kinetiq. So the one thing that Unit is doing, and some of the things that they've done, so for example, this is a post talking about just one example, right? Users have deposited $161 million of XPL to HyperLiquid, equal to 1.6.2% of the total supply and 8.76% of the circulating supply. Spot XPL volumes on HyperLiquid already flipped BTC, ETH, Sol, Pump, making it third largest trading venue by volume ahead of Bybit and OKX. So here's the thing that I want you to consider is this is Unit intern talking about this. Now, what's interesting is a new account on X launched called TradeXYZ, which Unit reposted and retweeted about, which is interesting because this is from what people are expecting to be Unit's new exchange. Now, Unit is probably one of the second largest projects on HyperEVM. And this is literally, I mean, if you go to their X page, this is the only post that they have, right? They have over 10,000 followers, and this is the first post that they made with a ton, like an insane amount of engagement. And one of the followers that they have at the very top is Unit. So I think there's a lot of interesting aspects behind this. By the way, if you aren't on the list, I'll leave a link to it down below. There are some conditions. You have to have traded at least, I believe, $1 million on HyperLiquid as far as being able to join. But this is interesting because remember when we talked about the beginning of the video, one of the key things and key features that there's going to be a lot of attention put on is going to be perp trading and other types of trading on the likes of HyperLiquid. So when you see Unit's new exchange possibly coming open and available, TradeXYZ, real-time access to global markets, not just crypto markets, global markets, 24/7 liquidity, Pro Tools, no gatekeepers. That I think is some huge alpha. That is some entry, very, I mean, this is getting on the wait list, right? Very, very important to get in early. I'll leave a link to it down below if you want to join. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on HyperLiquid. Where do you see the next potential airdrop? Do you think there's going to be potential? Are there projects, different avenues that you're going about, different strategies that you're taking? Leave your thoughts and comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, found it helpful, consider subscribing. You like this video, smash up the like. And until next time, guys, stay invested.